Setting goals is a critical part of being a successful manager. Now, there are two types of goals successful managers set for staff: productivity goals, that is, meeting the relevant production or service objectives set for the department, and development goals, that is, goals for improving the skills and abilities of individual team members or for the department. In a prior episode, we covered productivity goals. We'll cover setting development goals in this episode. Hi, I'm Rick Kendall.
And I'm Fred Ball.
Welcome to Management Mastery. The purpose of these podcasts is to share what each of us has learned about good and bad management in our combined over 40 years of experience, both as managers and executive coaches. During that time, we've coached managers at every level in companies from Fortune 100s to brand new startups in all major businesses, including nonprofits, government, and education. So whether you're just starting in your first management position or are an experienced manager looking to strengthen your management skills, we know our podcast will be valuable to you.
Whereas productivity goals are usually very quantitative, development goals are more often qualitative and internal. By internal, we mean that the impetus for the goal comes either from a joint decision by the manager and staff member or from the staff members themselves. So let's look at the types of developmental goals. These are the goals that are in addition to the individual's regular job duties and provide a means of expanding the skill base or other kinds of activities that they want to be involved in. The types of developmental goals are professional development, an opportunity for the individual to develop skills directly relevant to their current or future roles, or increase their knowledge of or visibility in their industry. Team-focused, an opportunity for the team to expand its skill set in order to provide for possible growth. For example, training a current staff member in a key skill area or skill rather than having to hire an outsider or a consultant. And third, personal growth, a chance for the employee to improve a relevant skill set or develop a new one. For example, to improve their website development abilities or take a course in leadership.
Yeah, as we said, Fred, developmental goals are not usually externally imposed. And that means they come from either the manager or the employee themselves. And the best process for you, the best process is for you, the manager, and the staff member to jointly agree that developing a specific skill or ability will make the person more valuable and productive. Even better is if the staff member suggests a developmental goal that they're interested in and that you recognize as valuable for the company.
When we previously discussed productivity goals, we suggested a simple yet effective means of successfully setting goals and tracking the progress. It's called the SMART framework, SMART. This is short for specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time-based. We think that this method is appropriate for development goals as well, although the time dimension may or may not be as relevant.
Well, first, it's important to be specific. Home in on a single skill or ability by asking the employee, what are you trying to accomplish? Why do you want to do it? What do you think you'll learn? What steps will you need to take? What progress will you like to see along the way? And how will you know if you've succeeded in achieving the goal?
Second, the goal must be measurable. That is, there needs to be specific criteria for indicating success. This helps the individual to stay on track, keeps them accountable, and adds motivation. This is not always as easy as it is with productivity goals, but nevertheless, it is important to try to set measurable objectives. Thus, in setting the goals, it's important to ask specifically, how can you measure success? What success steps do you expect along the way and in what time frame? And what indicators will signal that you've achieved success?
It's also important that the goal is achievable. You want to make the goal challenging, but still achievable. An unachievable goal creates confusion and frustration. So in setting the goal, you need to ask, is this goal realistic? Do you have the necessary resources to take on the goal? And does it fit in your overall job? And how does it fit?
The goal also has to be relevant. It should align with company goals, but also be worthwhile to the employee. Here you need to ask, is this goal worthwhile? Does this goal map to current business priorities? Can the staff member see why the goal is important to the business? And does it help the staff member see how their work is part of the big picture?
Yeah, that's really important that they see how it fits into everything. And finally, the goal needs to be time-based. What's the timeline for completion and the steps along the way? And unlike productivity goals, developmental goals may have a more flexible time frame. So at the outset, the manager needs to establish with the staff member what is the deadline for completion and why is that deadline important and what happens if it isn't met. And are there other initiatives hinging on the completion of this developmental goal?
Of course, what developmental goals a manager may want to set for a staff member or for their department will depend on a number of factors, including job requirements, specific strengths and weaknesses of either the staff person or the department overall. In general, the goal is to encourage staff, individually and collectively, to develop a growth mindset. That is, to actively research, identify, and begin to develop relevant new skills.
To be sure, there are a number of possible developmental goals and activities. I mean, some examples are becoming active or more active in a trade organization or association, or attending a national trade conference, and sharing the results of going to that conference with the whole team.
Yeah, that's clearly part of the whole growth mindset that we've been talking about here, and that's helpful. We try to use it whenever in our coaching situations. We try and use it with a manager that we're coaching to help them to get to see and try something new that they weren't sure that they either had the skill in or that it was something that they needed to learn. So additional ones are you can take a course on improving time management skills such as prioritizing tasks, setting realistic deadlines, minimizing distractions, and so forth. Or you could take a course on public speaking that gives you the opportunity to speak to members of the class. And Rick, you always talk about someone's ability or lack of ability in public speaking.
Well, that's always been an interest of mine because it's never bothered me, and yet they've done studies that said next to a fear of snakes, a fear of public speaking is the most common phobia people have, and it really is a handicap. And it's you really have to work to get around it, particularly if you're somewhere in the middle of your career. If you haven't, I spoke in front of groups in high school. I mean, it was it never really bothered me, but
there's no question. And when you're talking about the public speaking, and you said, for example, starting out in management or in the middle of their career, every time that you take a step forward, there's a greater likelihood that you're going to be doing some public speaking.
Oh, absolutely. And if you can't do it, it holds you back. I've known several people who just were dead in their tracks because they couldn't get up and speak in front of a group. And I think as a wise manager, if you have staff that have that problem, you treat it like any phobia, which is you expose the person a little bit at a time. Ask them to give a short report to your staff meetings. So they're talking to people they know, they're talking about something they know about well, and you kind of ease them into it that way and get them to do a little bit more and a little bit more and a little bit more.
Absolutely. That's a great suggestion.
Yeah, so it's something you can deal with, particularly if you see a staff person. Well, gee, if they could only, speak in front of clients, make presentations to clients, they'd move along much faster. But you have to work on it. It's not going to be all or nothing.
Yep.
And on the other end of that, you want staff members to practice active listening by asking friends and colleagues to signal when they're interrupting them or cutting them off. I mean, some people just, they're not paying attention, and it becomes a barrier to communication.
Sometimes that can also be frustrating. It happens to me at home when my wife raises her hand because I've interrupted her.
Don't you raise your hand to me.
Right.
They can also attend training to improve their emotional quotient. You can train people in this, especially for increasing self-awareness and how it impacts their ability to work with others. I have a friend who's got an uncle who, it's unnerving. The guy acts like you're not there. When he's telling you a story, he can tell what would be the most interesting story, and it can bore you to death because he's really not talking to you. He's just talking. And so the emotional quotient, making people be more aware of the fact that there are other people there. I mean, there are some people that do have, psychological issues, but there are also people who just need to be told, and too often they don't get that coaching. They don't get that feedback that George, you're not listening to what they're saying to you, and you got to pay more attention to when people are talking.
That's exactly right. Yeah. And then the self-awareness also, they need self-awareness, but then sometimes they need self-management to know when to stop talking.
Yes. We had a salesman who was a great salesman. I went on a client meeting with him, and he talked for, 15 minutes, and, I was beginning to wonder, how did he breathe? Because he never, and finally he stopped and asked if anybody had any questions, and this one client had about 15 questions, and he asked them all at once. And the salesman said, well, that was a lot of questions. And the client said, well, I was afraid if you'd started talking again, you'd never stop, so I had to get them all in at once. And it was just kind of, everybody laughed, but it was true.
Yeah. No, self-management is an important characteristic.
Right.
Other ones that could be considered or encourage a staff member to volunteer for a special assignment that is outside their normal comfort zone, and that can be an interesting challenge and some interesting new learning for them. Or to ask to serve as a member of the company's hiring team. The manager could ask the person if they're interested in doing it, or the person could volunteer. Network more by having or attending at least 2 network meetings per month, both internal as well as outside the company, in order to help the person get a broader perspective on the industry.
Yeah, I've said this before. I think I just said it a minute ago too, but it's worth emphasizing that I think too many managers see industry networking events as job hunting events, and that's the wrong way to look at it. You're getting exposure to how other people in your industry do things, what they're learning. You just get a lot of good intelligence that way. Plus, you develop these social skills that we're talking about that are so important. I think networking too often is seen as a negative by managers when they should be seeing it as a positive growth experience for their staff people.
Yep. What does the manager need? What else does the manager need to do?
Well, I think you need to publicly recognize staff members who complete their goals, to show them that you care, that you are pleased with what they've done, and that it shows the company values, and to incentivize others to do similar kinds of developmental tasks. And work with staff members who fall short by assessing the progress they did make and providing help and discussing next steps to continue the process.
There's no question that the manager can be helpful in that regard. So in summary, we have discussed the importance of development goals for both individuals and for the department. They are usually internal. By internal, we mean that the impetus for the goal comes either from a joint decision by the manager and staff members or from the staff members themselves. One way to think about the goal setting process is through the SMART framework, which sets goals that are specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time-based. The goal should be clearly understood by the manager and staff members before the process begins, even if the time for success is not clearly identified. Success needs to be recognized and rewarded by the manager.
We hope you have found this podcast useful and will come back again for more management mastery. If you have any comments about this or any of our episodes, or would like to find out more about our other services, including one-on-one coaching and group seminars for managers, visit our website at careercoachclass.com. Thanks for listening.